My sister smiled at me from across the lawyer's office. Then she said the words I will never forget. "You get nothing." Her voice was calm, almost amused, as if she had been waiting years to say it. "My name is Rachel Morgan, and 3 days earlier, my father had died after a sudden heart attack. I was still trying to understand how the strongest person I knew could be gone. And now I was sitting in an expensive law office while my older sister, Vanessa, looked at me like I didn't belong there. The attorney opened Dad's will. Vanessa sat straighter. My hands were shaking in my lap. Dad had owned several businesses, a large house, and property I knew was worth millions. But none of that mattered to me. I would have traded every dollar just to hear his voice again. Then the attorney started reading. "My father's house goes to Vanessa Morgan." She smiled. "The businesses, investments, and financial assets also go to Vanessa Morgan." My stomach dropped. I waited. There had to be something else. The attorney turned the page. "And to my daughter, Rachel." Vanessa looked directly at me. I held my breath. The attorney paused. "Nothing further has been listed." Silence filled the room. I couldn't move. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. "You heard him." I looked at the attorney. "Nothing?" He frowned. "According to this will, no." I felt embarrassed, confused, and strangely betrayed. Not because I wanted Dad's money, but because he would never have wanted me to feel like I meant nothing. Vanessa stood and picked up her purse. "Maybe now you'll understand that Dad finally saw you for who you really are." I stared at her. "What is that supposed to mean?" She smiled. "Exactly what I said." Then she walked out. But as I stood to leave, Dad's attorney stopped me. "Rachel." He reached under his desk and placed a thin black folder in front of me. His expression was serious. "Your father instructed me to give you this only if Vanessa inherited everything." I looked at the folder. My name was written across the front, in my father's handwriting. My heart started pounding. "What is this?" The attorney shook his head. "I don't know, but your father called it his insurance policy. Before I opened it, if you enjoy emotional stories filled with family betrayal, shocking secrets, and unexpected justice, subscribe to Real Calm Stories. And tell me in the comments, what country are you watching from?" I slowly opened the folder. Inside was a single photograph, a bank account number, and a letter from my father. The first line made my hands go cold. "Rachel, if Vanessa has told you that you get nothing, then she has already made the mistake I was waiting for." I read the first line again. "Rachel, if Vanessa has told you that you get nothing, then she has already made the mistake I was waiting for." My heart pounded. I turned the page. "Your sister believes the will is the end of this story. It isn't." There was a key taped beneath the letter, along with an address. My father's attorney watched me carefully. He left instructions for me to drive you there myself. An hour later, we stopped outside a small storage building on the edge of town. The key opened Unit 214. Inside was one old desk. On top of it sat a locked metal box. My name was engraved on the lid, Rachel Morgan. I stared at it. My father had prepared this for me. But why? The attorney opened the box with a second key. Inside were financial records, property documents, and copies of emails between Vanessa and someone whose name I didn't recognize. Then I saw a document that made me stop breathing. A transfer agreement. My sister had been moving money out of Dad's companies for nearly 2 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. I looked at the attorney. "Does Dad know about this?" He knew. The answer came from behind me. Vanessa. She stood in the doorway. Her face had changed completely. No smile, no confidence. "Rachel, listen to me." I held up the documents. "You stole from him?" She stepped closer. "It's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. That's what people always say when the proof is sitting right in front of them. Vanessa looked at the attorney. He shouldn't have brought her here. He followed your father's instructions, the attorney replied. My sister's eyes moved back to me. Dad owed me. I froze. What? For years, I did everything for him. I worked in those companies. I handled his problems. And you? She pointed at me. You disappeared whenever things got difficult. That wasn't true. I had left home because Vanessa had made my life unbearable after Mom died. But Dad had known that. He had tried to keep peace between us. Apparently, he had been planning something else too. I opened another file. Inside was a handwritten statement from Dad. If Rachel is reading this, Vanessa has probably shown you exactly why I could not trust her with everything. My sister's face turned white. There was more. The will was real. Vanessa had inherited the house, businesses, and accounts. But buried inside the documents was a clause she had never seen. If evidence of fraud or theft was discovered, every asset she inherited would immediately be frozen pending investigation. I looked at Vanessa. You knew this was coming. She shook her head. No. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen, and suddenly, she started crying. The attorney answered his own phone moments later. Then he looked directly at Vanessa. The bank has frozen every account. She stared at me in disbelief. But that wasn't the biggest secret in my father's file. At the bottom of the box was one final envelope, and written across it were 6 words: the truth about your real family. For several seconds, I couldn't bring myself to open the envelope. The truth about your real family. My hands went cold. Vanessa was still crying across the room, but I barely heard her. I looked at the attorney. What does this mean? He shook his head. Your father never told me what was inside. I broke the seal. The first thing I found was my birth certificate. I looked at the names. My mother's name was there. But the father's name had been left blank. My heart began pounding. I turned to the next document. It was a hospital record from 31 years ago. Then a photograph. A young woman stood beside my mother. I didn't recognize her, but I recognized the man standing behind them. My father. Dad had his arm around the woman, and written on the back was a date. 6 months before I was born. I looked at Vanessa. Did you know about this? She slowly shook her head. No. For the first time in my life, she looked genuinely afraid. Then I found another letter. Rachel, I should have told you this years ago. Your mother and I loved you before you were born, but I was not the man who gave you life. I stopped breathing. My eyes blurred. I kept reading. Your biological father was someone I once trusted more than anyone. His name was Daniel Reed. The photograph slipped from my hands. Who is Daniel Reed? The attorney went silent. Then Vanessa whispered, You don't know? I turned toward her. Know what? She looked at the photograph. Daniel Reed was the man who died with Mom. Everything inside me stopped. My mother had died in a car accident when I was 9. Dad had always told me she was driving home alone. But now Vanessa was saying she wasn't. I looked back at the letter. Dad had lied to me. My biological father had been in the car. He died instantly. Mom survived for 2 days. And before she died, she asked Dad to raise me as his own. My hands started shaking. So Dad knew the truth my entire life. Why didn't he tell me? Then I noticed something folded behind the letter. A DNA report. I opened it. My biological father wasn't Daniel Reed. I read the name again, then again. It was someone I had seen just hours earlier. Someone whose signature appeared on every document Vanessa had used to steal from Dad's company. I looked at the attorney. Who is Michael Hayes? His face went pale. Rachel. He reached for the papers. Michael Hayes is your father's business partner, the man who helped Vanessa prepare the documents for the inheritance meeting. And at that exact moment, I understood why Dad had left the secret file for me. The inheritance was never just about money. My father had spent years hiding the truth about who I was, and somehow the man connected to my birth was also connected to the money Vanessa had stolen. Michael Hayes. The name kept repeating in my mind. Dad's business partner, the man who had attended family dinners, the man who had watched me grow up, and according to the DNA report, possibly my biological father. I looked at the attorney. I need to see him. The attorney hesitated. Rachel, I don't think that's a good idea. But I was already walking toward the door. Vanessa followed me. Rachel, wait! I turned around. Why should I? Her face was still pale. Because Michael isn't going to tell you the truth. I laughed. And you are? She looked down. No. For once, she had no excuse. We found Michael at his office. He was standing beside the window when I walked in. He saw the DNA report in my hand, and his face changed. So Dad was right, I said. He knew you would come. I felt my anger rise. You knew who I was? Michael slowly sat down. Yes. For my entire life? Yes. My hands shook. Why didn't you tell me? Before he could answer, Vanessa spoke behind me. Because he was the one who convinced Dad to hide it. Michael looked at her. Enough. But Vanessa was no longer protecting anyone. You told Dad that if Rachel ever learned the truth, she would destroy everything. I stared at him. What everything? Michael opened a drawer and removed an old contract. 31 years ago, Dad and Michael had started their first company together, but the money that built it hadn't come from them. It had come from my mother. She had inherited a large sum before I was born. Michael had secretly used part of it to save the business. Dad discovered it years later. So the money Vanessa stole was connected to Mom. Michael nodded. Your father spent years rebuilding what I took. My stomach turned. Then I understood. Dad hadn't left me the secret file to give me an inheritance. He had left me proof. Proof that Vanessa and Michael were connected. I opened the final pages. There were recent bank transfers between them. Michael had been helping Vanessa move money. But one transfer stood out. It was made the week before Dad died. $2.4 million. Vanessa backed away. I didn't know about that one. Michael looked at her sharply. Stop talking. The attorney stepped forward. Where did that money go? Michael didn't answer. Then my phone rang. It was a voicemail from Dad's number. Impossible. He had recorded it before he died. I pressed play. Rachel, if you are hearing this, Michael has finally shown you who he really is. I could barely breathe. Then Dad said the words that changed everything. The $2.4 million isn't missing. It belongs to you. The room went silent after Dad's message ended. The $2.4 million belongs to you. I looked at Michael. He didn't deny it. Instead, he sat down slowly. Your father knew everything. I felt my hands tighten around the phone. Then why did he leave Vanessa everything? Michael gave a bitter smile. Because he wanted her to believe she had won. Vanessa stared at him. What? I opened the documents again. For the first time, I noticed a page attached behind the will. It was a trust agreement. Dad had transferred the $2.4 million into a protected account months before he died. My name was the only name listed, but there was something else, a condition. If Vanessa or Michael attempted to interfere with the trust, every document connected to their financial activity would automatically be released to investigators. Vanessa's face went white. Michael looked toward the attorney. You knew about this? The attorney nodded. Your father planned this carefully. I finally understood. Dad had never forgotten me. He had been watching, waiting. And when he realized Vanessa and Michael were working together, he created a plan that would expose them without putting me in danger. Vanessa began crying. I didn't want this to happen. I looked at her. But you wanted me to get nothing. She lowered her eyes. I was jealous. For years, I thought Dad loved you more. The truth was painful. Maybe she had believed that. Maybe Dad's secrets had damaged both of us in different ways. But jealousy didn't excuse what she had done. The evidence was eventually turned over to investigators. Vanessa cooperated. Michael was charged for the financial crimes connected to the company. The stolen money was recovered and Dad's businesses were protected. Months later, I returned to his old office. The room was exactly as he had left it. On his desk was a photograph of Vanessa and me as children. For years, I had thought Dad chose one of us over the other. But now I understood something different. He loved us both. He simply refused to let love blind him to the truth. Inside his desk, I found one final note. Rachel. An inheritance is not always money. Sometimes, it is the truth someone leaves behind, so you can finally stop living inside a lie. I sat there for a long time. Dad had left Vanessa the illusion of everything. He had left me something far more valuable. The truth. The truth about my mother. The truth about Michael. The truth about Vanessa. And the truth that even when I believed I had been forgotten, my father had been trying to protect me. My sister had looked at me and said I would get nothing. She was wrong. I got the secret she never saw coming, and that secret changed everything. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Real Calm Stories for more emotional family betrayal, hidden inheritances, shocking secrets, and unexpected justice. And tell me in the comments, what country are you watching from? Sometimes the person who seems to get nothing is the one who receives the truth that was worth more than everything else.